You know why there are not more great marriages in America? Because there are a lot of good marriages. So even if you've got a good marriage, hopefully we want to move you from good to great. Does that make sense? So that you know, come ready to let God work on you and your marriage. Come ready to completely examine yourself. If you feel that your spouse is the problem and really needs to change, the best way for that to happen is for you to change yourself. Now, I didn't initially agree with that when I first heard it, but think about it. If I really want Teresa to change, by the very virtue of the fact that I change, she has no choice but to change because now she's got something different to react to. Does that make sense? I mean, and then Scripture supports this. 1 Peter, you know, if you look at those two verses, it talks about what wives, okay, you really want your husband to do different, this is what you do. Husbands, you really want your wives to do different, this is what you do. So, I mean, Scripture supports that. You know, you've heard this saying, wherever you go, there you are. I mean, think about it. Now here's the other issue about the study. Although both men and women want to be loved and respected, the study is based on the assertion that the primary need for men and women is different. Okay? Now again, I know some of you have been here since we started, but just to recap. In other words, if forced to choose, study after study has shown that men would choose respect, wives, this is how you say you love him, and women would choose love, primary needs. Okay, page 3. And just a reminder for those of you who haven't been with us for years and years, we did an earlier study, which I think goes down as one of our all-time great studies, the 5 love languages. And I'll put that link on there because everybody has a different language. You know, how do you say I love you is kind of different for everybody. Number 3, commit to working on your marriage. I always thought this was phenomenal. You know, as we counsel in Bridget and Jenny as well with couples that are about to be married, it's fascinating to me the amount of money they spend on their wedding. Fascinating. And so I did this little research. On average, U.S. couples spend a little over $19,000 on their wedding. Now, you know it is a wedding day. And they spend almost nothing on the marriage, which lasts supposedly a lifetime. I mean, think about that. Think about that. So, after spending thousands of dollars on your wedding day, wouldn't it make sense to spend at least a few dollars on your married life? Seminars, studies, counseling, books, tape, etc. Now here's the overriding theme, guys. This is crucial. This is crucial. The real culprit in this whole crazy cycle is Satan. This is crucial to understand. We went to a seminar 20 plus years ago when the guy said this to me, which was one of the most fascinating stuff I've ever heard. And I know Sylvester Eunice is on there. We can read some of it. They still teach us or not. But here's what he said. Your mate is not your enemy. They still do that. And when I heard them say that, I thought about it and I said, man, Teresa is really not some evil, mean-spirited person out to kill me. She is trying to help me. I mean, think about it. I mean, that may make sense to everybody. When I first heard it, I had to think about it. Your mate is not your enemy. And so Teresa's not out to get me. Even when she says stuff that make it seem like, anyway.
In order to get to that point where your mate is not your enemy, that means you need to study each other. You need to become closer and have that assurance that your mate is not your enemy. It doesn't, and like I say, it doesn't just come. And I wanted to apologize. I would tell the ladies a lot of things, and I'll say something like, you know, this is what I've done, da da da. But I wanted to make sure y'all understand we're not all in the same place. We haven't all had the same experiences. So you have to get with God, and He'll teach you how to do. But there are some basic principles of Scripture that I speak that's true and true. And that is what I really want to always bring along. Let that be it. Basis of Scripture that God has said for us to do this, and you can't get out of that. That's basic. But anyway, getting to know your partner, and then you'll have that assurance of he or she is not my enemy.
Now, we know that Satan is a great diversionary tactician. So Genesis, why I read what I read for the devotion is I really want us all to come to this understanding on page 3. If man had not sinned, he would have always ruled with wisdom and love. And if woman had not sinned, she would have always been a helpmate filled with humility and meekness, always extending respect. So the crazy cycle, and for those of you who didn't hear that study, we'll touch on it. That obviously was not part of God's plan. I mean, so here's the thing. When I don't act right, it's because I'm acting more like me and less like Christ. And so our challenge is to become more like Christ. You follow me? So I mean, I'm not going to read this whole thing to you, but I thought this was powerful from John Piper. It kind of just explains the stuff we're dealing with is after the fall stuff. Bottom of page 3. The original plan was perverted by Satan. Satan's the culprit. Satan's the enemy in this thing. He's the one trying to mess everything up. You know, so even when Teresa does something that's, I think, is irritating, and even if she is acting more like herself and more like Christ, that's the devil's fault. You know what I'm saying? So what can I do to fix it? What makes him angry is when you praise in the middle of, bad situations, and then I strive to be more Christ-like. That's how we actually kind of combat this. All right, page 4, which is very good for the introduction part. Okay, people are generally, this is what I want to tell you about with this fact. People are generally hellish, humanly, or heavenly. Okay, what that means. Hellish people, some people are just naturally like this. They return evil for good. Think about it. Evil for good. Now, this is where I operate most of the time. I'll just talk about myself. Most people are human. I'll return good for good, and sometimes evil for evil. Oh, you did me? That's how you want to do it? Okay, that's not right either. Now, where we want to be is heavenly, when we're even returning good for evil. Does that make sense? I mean, this is where we want to go. Okay, so that's kind of our overview, the rules of conduct. The real enemy is not Teresa, but is Satan. So now the study. The study is based on Ephesians 5:33. However, each of you also must love his wife as he loves himself, and the wife must respect her husband. And I shared with you guys some sample definitions, and I couldn't find original Hebrew to translate to English. I did look, but so obviously the dictionary is not all encompassing, but just some definitions about love and respect, so we're all on the same page. And later, guys, we're going to divide up. This is one thing I think that maybe we're struggling with a bit in here. I'm not trying to be disrespectful to my husband. I'm not trying not to love my wife. So we're going to divide up and talk about in groups a little bit later, what does respect or disrespect look like to men? And what does love and not being loved look like to women? So we're going to talk about that, hopefully before we get out of here. Let me see. Okay, so here's I guess as I lead us into the study, I want to share this with you. On pages 13 through 18 starts with a overview of Genesis 3:16. And let me tell you why I included this, because I think it's important for us to go through this study. We talked about Satan's a real enemy in this. Okay, now in Genesis 3:16, y'all put that in here, Genesis 3:16. Oh, we could.
Okay, Genesis 3:16, this is out of the New Living Translation. Then he said to the woman, I will sharpen the pain of your pregnancy, and in pain you will give birth, and you will desire to control your husband, but he will rule over you.
Okay, now let me say this. I use the New Living Translation. I'm not a biblical scholar, so I want to be sure to mention that there are two different schools of thought on how to interpret Genesis 3:16. Some of what I'm sharing with you is more opinion, because I can't speak with 100% degree of certainty, because some people would disagree with this. But you know how you kind of find stuff to support what you're thinking anyway. So it's kind of what I'm thinking, and it's kind of the interpretation I want to use, but I do want to share that, hey, I may be wrong. This